welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. There is a conspiracy theory that religion plays a broad range of roles in matters of war and peace. All religions, particularly ones that enjoy cultural dominance, are said to be capable of marshalling substantial resources for peace by employing their symbols and rituals, invoking their sacred texts, and using their institutions to promote a vision for peace. More importantly, the massive resources of the church must be employed to produce lay agents of peace through lifelong education and formation in peacemaking. Well, it is believed that the church can, in a restive society, facilitate peace agreements, providing safe spaces for conversation between contending parties in a situation where both parties are ready to talk the way forward. How true is this conspiracy theory? And even if it's true, it's really sad that the belligerent party, in the case of the Amazonian War, is unwilling to come to the table for these talks. It's still the drafting season, and Manu County will be coming up for the draft of this weekend. I'm sure you are excited. Well, to usher us into the full briefings of Undaunted tonight, we'll have the prime headlines.
Here are the prime headlines. As a result of your draft, Amazonian fighters are doing well in the home front. Overcomers Christian group covered in Bamenda. Well, we saw them conveying Bamenda to pray for peace in restive Amazonia. Also tonight, reoccurring floods taking lives and damaging properties. Former CRTV sports journalist Fon Ekekie says colleagues betrayed him simply because of his views about the Amazonian conflict. That is an interesting report. Also tonight, the ink continues to flow about Bakassi, which is not La Republic's but Amazonian's zone. Now the foreign scene, China hits back against Western sanctions. We have Barrister Tim based here in the studio, but we would only get him when the news begins.
Our vision in this interim government is to make ABC a leader and a real war horse of our struggle. We want to grow it, expand it, hire and train more hands, and broadcast round the clock, around the world, and take command of the media space of this world.
You can enjoy all round the clock, 24/7 exclusive moments of bliss as an ABC Amba TV Club member. A cappella. Latest Nigerian stroke African movies, global politics, ABC Amber News and updates, historical documentaries, and lots more. In our daily programs, we have on into the news, untold stories with Onyi Okpala and Star Smart, exclusive discussion, revolutionary panel conversation, infotainment, edutainment, intro governmental debates on topical issues with Tar Paddy King, State of the Liberation Movement, Fronting IG, and People of Ambazonia's position, the Struggles Weekly Update with Secretary Martin Mungwa, PhD, FASC. Health is wealth, health education, and awareness within the Ambazonian community with Dr. Yaya. Liberation Prayer an intercessory ministry for Amazonia with Pastor Victor Mba. Our freedom, spiritual awareness, and education for the Amazonian community with Pastor Victor Mba and Pastor Commando. Church and politics, neutralizing the myths and preconceived religious and political philosophies that limit the Christian involvement in the realms of decent politics with Pastor Commando. The Horizon, the voice of the Amazonian woman with Dr. Patience Abiedo and Lady Casey. Our Amber history, bringing to limelight the hidden history of Amazonia to the world with Pastor Commando. Appointment on community building, education on patriotism within the Amazonian communities with Ma Rachel Itatima. Ethics for an Emerging Nation, watchdog of basic principles and morals of a nation at war with Ma Dorothy Ngwa. Upcoming programs: Pigeon News, Vernacular Talk Show, County Roots, Activists Corner, Amba Focus, only on ABC Amba Television. We the people, the voice of the voiceless. For 24/7 access, subscribe as a club member on www.abcambatv.com/subscribe.
When La Republic the Cameroon government went in for a military option to resolve the southern Cameroon's marginalization claims, she thought it would be an easy ride. The Amazonian Restoration Forces have grown militarily to defend themselves and challenge La Republic the Cameroon in its own game. The Amazonian Restoration Forces yesterday sent three occupational La Republic of Cameroon forces to a very far land in Ekok. Amazonia is now versed with the military option and is paying the colonial La Republic of Cameroon government in hard coin. When will they stop illegally patrolling the streets of Amazonia? Now, this is where we will begin the full briefings of Undaunted tonight. How are you doing, Sir?
Very well, Onyi. Yesterday, we brought to you this breaking news in bits. Today, we have the full report. Three La Republic government terrorist soldiers have reportedly been killed by the Amazonian Restoration Forces. Sources in Ekok, near Mamfe Manu Atlantic Zone confirmed this. At a mixed extortion post in Ekok, terrorist inspector of police Fungandi Apollinaire, Ndome Ferdinand Serge, and Vodo were shot on Monday, July 24th, 2023.
Well, the Amazonian Restoration Forces took away weapons and ammunition. The carcass of the three were carried away by other terrorist forces who came after the party was over. Thousands of La Republic of Cameroon soldiers and civilians have been killed since the start of the conflict in 2016. But for several months now, the colonial La Republic of Cameroon government has not released figures for their casualties suffered on the ground. This incident happened in Manu. And of course, um, what is coming next on Saturday, the draft. And so you want to see the ARF succeed in areas like this. You need to prepare to draft on Saturday.
Well, while many see religion as a source of conflict and division, there is suggestion that religion plays a broad range of roles in matters of war and peace, that all religions, especially ones that enjoy cultural dominance, are capable of marshaling substantial resource for peace by employing their symbols and rituals, invoking sacred texts, and using their institutions to promote a vision for peace.
It must be acknowledged, though, that religion can and often are co-opted into the service of violence. The challenge at hand is to engage the theological, institutional, and cultural power of the church to provide a compelling peace narrative to stand against violent aggression. More importantly, the massive resources of the church must be employed to produce lay agents of peace through lifelong education and formation in peacemaking.
Well, it is believed that the church can, in a restive society, facilitate peace agreements providing safe spaces for conversations between contending parties in a situation where both parties are ready to talk the way forward. But this is difficult and different in the case of the war in Amazonia, where the colonial government is not willing for a genuine dialogue with the interim government. In this case, the church just only has to put its knees on the ground and pray to God. This is what the Overcomers Christian group did in Bamenda as they came together for the return of peace.
A group of Christian faithful in Bamenda by the name of the Overcomers have organized a prayer session in Bamenda for God to intervene for peace to return to the restive Federal Republic of Amazonia. The prayer session took place at the abandoned Bamenda Municipal Stadium on Sunday, July 23rd, 2023. To the faithful stakeholders, have failed to arrive at a consensus for the war to come to an end, and since God cannot fail, bringing God into the affair is the surest way for peace to return without man's protocol, the belief.
Well, the Overcomers Christian group started the day with a walk on the commercial avenue before ending their walk at the Bamenda Municipal Stadium where prayers were offered. The church has suffered also with the war in Amazonia. Christians have even been killed in churches, like in the case of the Bali Presbyterian Church, where Larry public occupational forces shot at random, wounding the pastor and killing a woman. So this is why they moved for the rally.
All right, moving on. ABC Amber TV News just learned that Greenpeace Africa and NGO is calling on the Colonial Republic to Cameroon's government to put in place an effective disaster risk management plan. The return of the rains this year has caused severe flood not just in Amazonia like towns of Buea and Victoria that have left untold damages, which includes loss of lives, but also in La Republic de Cameroon in cities like Douala. Faced with this situation, which seems to be getting worse over the years, the failed La Republic de Cameroon's government's response do not seem to be accurate.
Even if La Republic discriminates only against Amazonians, the effect of poor town planning is everywhere, which proves they are just poor in management. The case of the city of Douala is symptomatic of the ongoing situation. Just this week, the floods in the town led to the collapse of a buildings leaving close to 40 people dead and several others wounded. These floods are becoming recurrent in Cameroon, as in several other countries of the world, are one of the strong signs that climate change is a reality and require urgent actions from leaders. Ranice Jovia Njuja, campaigner at Greenpeace Africa, says we need to attack the root of the problem. The floods we are experiencing today are the result of little to no foresight on the part of the government.
Well, in 2020 alone, nearly 160,000 people were affected by flooding in far north of La Republic du Cameroon, a region already heavily impacted by the exactions of Boko Haram sects, and which, like the rest of the world, had to deal with COVID-19 pandemic. Greenpeace Africa calls on the government of La Republic of Cameroon to take its responsibilities and reconsider its international commitment in terms of risk management and natural disasters, protection of people, and the fight against climate change. In their words, it says, we note that for cities like Douala and Yaoundé, the outflow of rivers from their beds is partly linked to the clogging of drains by plastic bottles. Where are we with a ban on the use of non-biodegradable plastics packaging decided in 2014? Well, it is clear that its implementation was limited to the first weeks of the signing of the decree, says René Jovier.
Well, René's Jovia indicates that it is more than urgent for La Republic to ensure the implementation of the measures in its contingency plan. It is also important to put in place adaptation measures in order to prevent disasters related to the changing climate, but also to protect people and their property, and thus remain consistent with its international commitments in the fight against these floods. Moving on, former CRTV sports journalist Fon Echekie says colleague betrayed him simply because of his views about the Amazonian conflict. The revelation came 6 years after the venerated football commentator was coldly left alone until he retired himself 2 years before his legal retirement age. Whereas ace journalists had been given several chances to remain at Cameroon Radio Television after their retirement, the case of this man with wonderful football jargon was propelled by his views on the southern Cameroon's Ambazonia conflict. Even before reaching his retirement age, he was already giving cold shoulders. He could have stayed for 5 more years if the general manager wished.
He was interviewed recently on the Canal 2 International. Fon said while in Gabon covering the 2017 African Cup of Nations, which La République de Cameroon later won, he was perplexed to see that the state media was showing only a positive side of the armed conflict ongoing in the southern Cameroon's Amazonia. He told his head of mission that it's also good as a media to inform people that all is not well because these can radicalize the Amazonian people. The countenance on the face of Alain Belebi changed. He became more furious when Fawn advised that President Paul Biya should release those arrested to calm everyone. According to the phone, he was told that the head of state cannot do that. He says, I told him he's the father of the country, and if there is a problem, he could call them and resolve the problem. He told me it was not possible. The president cannot receive people like that. Now, this is what the phone narrated.
The fund also revealed that his downfall was imminent after their return, and it was just a matter of time. He also said Alain asked him, is that how you speak? So if we go back to Yaoundé after the African Cup of Nations, will you go back to Bamenda? Bellaby retorted. The fund replied no, that he'll remain in Yaoundé, but the atmosphere was already tense at the period. And he said when they went back to Yaoundé, his attitude changed towards the fund. He doesn't know why, what he told the general manager, but then they had to go to the Unity Palace, that is the presidential residence, to receive the indomitable lions after the AFCON. He was in George Ewane's car, that's his colleague who we talked to. He asked him why did Alain Belly think that he is radical, and he told him that something happened in Libreville.
The journalist said when he returned to the Cameroons, he was appointed to work in the secretariat of the same Alain Bilabi on the radio. When he refused to work there, citing partially in Bilabi's handling of professional issues, CRTV passed an announcement that he had abandoned duty. Meanwhile, he was presenting a program on television at the time.
Now, that's the plight of southern Cameroons in La République. Even in appointment, they are relegated and marginalized. As such, many journalists in active service within the colonial Yaoundé annexationist government are no longer professionals. They fear telling the truth and have turned to press singers condoning with the ills of the failed regime for the fear of the unknown. Any journalist who wants to be professional has to leave the country or face the guillotine. Latest reports reaching Undaunted says the Nigerian House of Representatives is considering taking back ceded Bakassi land to La Republique. The House of Representatives Ad hoc Committee on International Boundary Dispute between Nigeria and La Republique has said it might consider a fresh application to appeal the International Court of Justice judgment that ceded Bakassi to La Republique. The ad hoc committee was set up by the House to probe the case of encroachment into another Cross River State territory by La Republique. The Danare and Biajua communities and about 7,000 to 10,000 hectares of land in the Boki area of Cross River State risk being lost to La Republique, according to a motion by lawmakers from the state last week.
Well, the lawmakers in the motion that was presented by Honorable Victor Abang had said this was as a result of the non-location of Pillar 113A by the Technical Committee of La Republique du Cameroon, Nigeria Mixed Commission. The potential loss of the second Cross River State territory also has its basis in the same 2002 judgment that ceded Bakassi. In a meeting with relevant stakeholders on the issue on Thursday, the chairman of the ad hoc committee, Benny Lar, said they are concerned about the potential loss of a significant landmass and Nigerian citizens residing within it to La Republic of Cameroon.
In attendance at the meeting was the Director General of the National Boundary Commission, Adamu Adaji, representatives of the affected Boki communities, as well as representatives of security agencies, amongst others. She, however, assured that the House would not let another Nigerian territory be lost to another country.
Well, still in that regard, the Director General of the Nigerian Boundary Commission, NBC Adamu Adaji, had called for compliance with the provisions of the ICJ judgment. Members of the committee expressed anger that the NBC did not seem to be interested in protecting the interests of the country. A community leader from Buki, Honorable Cletus Obon, urged intervention to avoid the loss of land and displacement of the people.
Now, the dispute over the Bakassi Peninsula is a long standing one, and it has a lot of historical and political context. Nigeria claims that the Bakassi Peninsula was illegally ceded to La Republique in the early 90s, and that the area has always been historically and culturally Nigerian. La Republique, on the other hand, argues that the peninsula has been under their control since colonial times and that the people living there identify as Cameroonians. According to the International Court of Justice (ICJ), the land boundary between La Republique and Nigeria extends to the Bakassi Peninsula. The ICJ ruled in 2002 that Bakassi should be ceded to La Republique only because southern Cameroons are still yet to gain its recognition as a sovereign nation. However, there has been ongoing disagreements and tensions over the ruling, and many people in the region still consider themselves to be Nigerian.
Well, there are some who argue that the ICJ's ruling did not take into account the complex history and context of the dispute, and that the decision was made without considering the views and interests of the people who actually live in Bakassi. It is important to remember that international boundaries are often the result of historical and political forces that have little to do with the people who actually live in the affected areas. Whatever the case, we believe this matter will be put to rest once the southern Cameroons, Amazonia, the true neighbors with their internationally recognized boundaries with Nigeria regains its independence, it will be a done story. But before then, we have a legal mind in the studio who will do justice to this story. We have treated this report before, where we had the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Amazonia, Mr. Erikati, who clarified that that piece of land belongs to Ambazonians. Tonight, we have Barrister Tim Bessier who will second that motion. Good evening, Barrister Bessier. All right, Barrister Bessier, you are here already. So please tell us. This is more like going back and forth. We've been here before, and some time it looked like the case was over and done with. But here we are going back to this. What can you say about what is currently happening when Ambazonians are the true owners of that particular space, Bakassi?
That's got it. This is not that deep. What are we listening to? Since time has gone, I beg.
But why were they missing in the RCJ? Why were they not part of it? The RCJ was created as part of the United Nations. In fact, it forms part of the United Nations Charter. The United Nations Charter binds all country members of the United Nations. It is provided for in Article 94 of the Charter. And therefore, any country that accedes to the United Nations signs the United Nations Charter that binds them. Ambazonia was not and is not yet a party to the United Nations. We are not. And so we were not part of the judgment of the RCJ of 2002. Ambazonia was not part of it. But shall we become part of it? Of course. At this stage in 2023, Ambazonia is fighting for the restoration of its independence, for the recognition of its independence. Once it is recognized, we must remember that in 1961, there were less than 100 countries at the United Nations. Today, there are 199 members of the United Nations. So other countries have been born out of other countries. New boundaries have been drawn up to separate the two countries, different countries, not just two countries. For example, the easier one that we know is South Sudan. Sudan was one country. South Sudan has been born out of Sudan as an independent country. Do they have an internationally recognized boundary between South Sudan and Sudan? Of course. Who defines that? So boundary issues will always be there. But as far as Bakassi is concerned, and Ambazonia is concerned, and the Republic is concerned, this is a simple formula. We are fighting to become the 55th member of the African Union. We're not yet. Who will become? Where do you think our boundaries will be drawn? To the west, our neighbor will be Nigeria. To the east, the boundary will be drawn along the river Mongo. Will not be drawn in Victoria. And if the Republic cannot claim Victoria as part of its country, how are they going to claim Bakassi? Why is Bakassi so important? Why are they talking so much about it? It is because of the oil-rich area. I think all of us know that there's something in Limbe in Victoria called the refinery. Refinery refines oil, but there's no oil field in Victoria, none in Boya, none in Tico. All the oil refined in Victoria comes from Bakassi. And so, in the future Ambazonia tomorrow, somebody can daydream that like people can say, well, the refinery in Victoria is our own, it belongs to us. It's like a joke. What do you bother ourselves with that? If the Nigerian government chooses to go back to the ICJ, which I think they cannot, I read that they think in the newspaper, they're talking about appeal. You don't appeal a case like that there. The case has been 27 years old. It was passed in 2002. We are now 2023. In fact, nearly all the recommendations of the ICJ of 2002 have been implemented. They've all been implemented as far as the judgment is concerned.
But you mentioned that you stated that the Bakassi is in the southern Cameroons. You said it's in the Victoria, so I want to get. You said it's in Victoria.
I said all the oil being refined in Victoria refinery comes from Bakassi, and Bakassi is in the southern Cameroons. If you look at the judgment,
that Bakassi is in the southern Cameroons, and the southern Cameroons is working towards global recognition as the 55th African nation. But right now that it's a war-torn Amazonia right now, and we know that this is in the southern Cameroons. Can the southern Cameroons lay claim to this piece of land, or how is the process going to go after the war, or right now that it's going into court for like the obtained time, and it's going to be a sealed, it might just be a sealed judgment if the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, gives a verdict. Is there something the southern Cameroons can do to reclaim their piece of land, or does the ICJ have to do something?
No, the ICJ does not need to do anything. We don't need to do anything. This is what happened. If you look at the judgment, the ICJ judgment, maybe I can take it back to, but it started as the definition of the maritime border between Nigeria and Cameroon in the ICJ. But the case ended up not there. The case ended up involving the whole boundary from Yola, that is northern Cameroon, to Bakassi. The case was originally between two countries, Cameroon and Nigeria. It ended up involving three countries, Nigeria, Cameroon, and Equatorial Guinea. If you look at that judgment, it deals with the pillars as of 1884 that divided German Cameroon from Nigeria. German Cameroon had a boundary with Nigeria. But La Republic is not German Cameroon. The judgment goes on to analyze the 1919 partition of Cameroon between French administered territory and English administered territory. So the judgment is long enough, it's detailed. And Barcelona does not need to go back to the court, which is why I say, if we got our independence recognized today, Cameroon cannot come to say, well, we own Bakassi because we won a case at the Hague. No, we're not. Ambassador was not party to that case. In any case, physically speaking, they cannot come and cross Victoria. That's what about Victoria. They cannot come and cross the Mongo. Come cross Victoria, where the refinery is based, to go and claim Bakassi. They cannot even come to claim the refinery, which is in Victoria. All of us agree the refinery in Victoria belongs to Ambazonia. It is situated on Ambazonia land. And they cannot come. And if you look at the map, the case again, Cameroon, East Cameroon, which is today the Republic of Cameroon, has never shared any maritime borders with Nigeria. Because President of the Republic of Cameroon is a product of the division of German Cameroon, is a part that was administered as French administered trust territory of Cameroon. They never shared any maritime borders with Nigeria. If they share any maritime border, they share it with Equatorial Guinea in Kribi. They are so far away from Bakassi that they cannot lay any claim there. And again, let me just illustrate this. What is happening, what we are afraid of, is not new. It has happened somewhere else in Africa. Let me take the case of Namibia. We have told this story before. Namibia was a trust territory like Ambazonia. It was handed over to South Africa to administer. The South Africans claimed that Namibia was part of their country and refused to give it independence. They administered it as like people is trying to administer us. And in that process of administering, they built the deepest seaport in Walvis Bay in the whole of Southern Africa. The best seaport there was in Walvis Bay. Walvis Bay is on the coast of Namibia. So when the ICJ ruled that, look, Namibia is not part of South Africa, you have to leave, the South African government sought to own Walvis Bay because they built it. They did not succeed. They had to go because they were building Walvis Bay on a foreign land. They were developing a deep sea port on a foreign land. They had to leave. The next example I can give again is Ethiopia and Eritrea. You know, we've all said the story. No, Ethiopia has not access to the sea. They were on the mountains, the Abyssinian mountains. That's where they are. Luckily, Eritrea, which was a trusted territory like us, was trusted to them, minister. And Eritrea has access to the sea, the port of Asmara. So because Ethiopia has no access to the sea, they thought they could claim Eritrea as part of their own country, so that they will have access to the sea where they can export their own goods. It failed. Eritrea became independent, and Ethiopia lost the access to the sea. In order to go to the sea to ship their things, they have to enter into agreements with Eritrea. So they can lay all those stupid claims.
Okay, so
Eritrea, again, I
from
said,
what you just
the judgment
explained
said,
now, Barrister Timmy Besia, Barrister Timmy Besia, from what you just explained now, this is a similar case to what is happening now. This particular Bakassi is very similar to this particular one. The bone of contention here now is not even with La Republique, as you've said, because when Amazonia gains its independence, it's clear who the Bakassi would belong to if the International Court of Justice gives its verdict that the Bakassi belongs to the Cameroons, it would definitely go to Southern Cameroons when we gain independence. So now the bone of contention is, what if the International Court of Justice gives its verdict that the Bakassi belongs to Nigeria? That would either mean Amazonia would have to let it go, or they'll have to have another battle after this one when Amazonia is recognized.
Now, I think you are speculating on a very legal principle. The ICJ, I've said this before, right here. The ICJ has already ruled Bakassi is not Nigeria. That's all. It's not going to come back because they didn't just rule by imagination. They ruled based on what was the boundary between German Cameroon and Nigeria. Bakassi was not part of it. Bakassi was part of German Cameroon. that part of German Cameroon, the road as it went down, became British Southern Cameroon, a trusted of British Cameroons, starting from Yola in the north to Bakassi in the ocean. And so once they put that buffer state called British administered Cameroon in between Nigeria and Cameroon, Nigeria did not have any border with that Republic of Cameroon. What was, again, the Bakassi, the judgment in the north, they put new pillars. What was Nigeria's claim to that northern part? Their claim was based on the 1961 plebiscite, where Northern Cameroon voted to join them. That was their claim. Otherwise, the boundary that divided that part of the northern German Cameroon from Nigeria was well defined with pillars. So again, on the issue of Bakassi, two issues will arise. The first issue is the court has already ruled that Bakassi is not Nigeria. Yes, the court also ruled that Bakassi is part of Cameroon. But what part of Cameroon were they talking about? If tomorrow Southern Cameroon gets its independence, that's why I gave the illustration. If we get our independence, where are we going to put our eastern border? Where shall our boundary between Cameroon, Republic, and Ambazina be? Will it be in Victoria? Will it be in Bafoussam? Will it be in Bamenda? No. We'll be at what do you call that village after Santa? That's the international boundary. There can be 20 crossovers to Bamenda. That will not make Bamenda part of their territory. If we get independent, if we get recognized tomorrow. There can be to Tico. That would not have changed the fact that Tico is Ambazonia. That's it. They will not, if they choose to go back to court, because this judgment binds them.
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis
Barrister
Cameroon.
T,
Amazonia was never part of the judgment.
in the course of this discourse, Barrister Mbisi, in the course of this discourse, you did ascertain, in fact, that was the first question, you did ascertain that the Bakassi belongs to Amazonians, and we still asked, what can be done? And if I heard you correctly, you said nothing for now. I'm sure you said nothing can be done for now until we get our independence. Now, going forward, how else can we, or what else do we need to go to the media? Do we need to make more noise? I know we are doing something. I mean, having you as a legal mind clear the air is something, but what extra thing can Amazonians do? Or maybe the interim government led by President Samuel Ikomesa could do to ensure that that statement is heard by the international communities or by the court or by anybody that this even belongs to us in the first place? What extra thing can we do?
What we're doing right now, as we speak, is enough education, enough clarification. And maybe people do not know what was part of the reasoning in the ruling of the ICJ to say that Bakassi belongs to Cameroon. What are the pieces of evidence they produced there in court? It's in the record. They produced evidence there in 1961, 11 February plebiscite. People in Bakassi voted for the plebiscite. They voted in the plebiscite. Did our people vote in the plebiscite? No. Did Nigeria vote in the plebiscite? No. The plebiscite was for Southern Cameroonians, and the people in Bakassi voted as Southern Cameroonians, as Ambazonians. And so the claim by Nigeria where a million of our people live there is immaterial. They use the Naira there. But using the Naira there does not make it Nigeria. And so on and so forth. So what we can do, there's no legal action we can take at this point. If tomorrow we have our independence properly established, recognized, we'll be in a occupation because the people will move the soldiers out to their own country. If they don't move them out, They will be occupiers. So they moved their troops, not all from Bakassi. They moved their troops from Manfe. They moved their troops from Boya. They moved their troops from Bamenda. And wherever they are, back to their own country. So what? How would they stay in Bakassi and they stay there on our claim? Bakassi was adjudged to be Cameroon because the Bakassians voted in 1961 during the plebiscite. And as I've said again, the people of La Republique du Cameroon did not vote in the plebiscite. Nobody voted even from the Cocoa next to us, not even from Bunda. The people of Nigeria who live in the same story, who live across Nigeria, they didn't even vote in the plebiscite. These people voted in the plebiscite. The plebiscite was for British Southern Cameroonians. Full stop. So there's so much evidence that only the blindest man will go to challenge. Why are they so interested? Why is that people talking so much about Bakassi? Why are they not talking about Kem? Why are they not talking about Babaju? They are talking about Bakassi. There's oil there. They put oil rigs to exploit the oil because of the riches that are there. But the most stupid thing, we didn't know that they were making a mistake, was to build the refinery in Victoria. How far is Victoria from from Douala? A few kilometers, they were going to build in Douala there. But even they build it there, and we got independent, they will not have oil to pump there because we will cut the pipelines. Because the oil is coming from Bakassi, it is being shipped there by pipelines. Pipelines are planted in the ocean that bring the crude oil to the refinery. And so it's a mute issue. We could not be party to the ICJ case because we are not part of the United Nations. It's meant for United Nations members. The judgment, even as it does not even bind us. It binds the parties who were to it. Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, who joined later on, and the Republic. If another action must be taken, that will be decided upon our full restoration of our independence. If they refuse to leave, then we'll know what action to institute against them. They cannot institute action against us. But we can institute an action against them if we are properly constituted as a government, we have a country recognized, and they refuse to go away. Like the case of Namibia I've just mentioned. We will sue them, and the court will force them to go. Like they force the South Africans to leave Walvis Bay. We will sue them, and the court will force them to go. Like they forced Ethiopia out of Asmara.
All right, thank you
Because
so
that will
much.
give
I
them
mean,
harm.
you've clarified, you have educated as well, you have informed. And I love the fact that you stated it clearly that this is an education. And so I'm sure that everyone, both in the home front, in the diaspora, would know that this is their land, this is their place. They will know that Bakassi is theirs. And so history will hold that record and the generations to come would uphold it as well. All right, Barrister Basia, this is where I would have to leave you because we still have the African reports and the foreign reports yet to come. But we'll definitely have you as this court case continues to unfold because I mean you are in the right authority to speak on this subject matter. And so we'll definitely have you subsequent as we continue to dig deep into this particular case.
Moving on with our African report, a top envoy to Sudan's paramilitary report yesterday said it was time for peace. Youssef Ezzat made his remarks in Togo, where he was attending talks aimed at preventing Sudan's Darfur region from sliding deeper into war. We apologize for the break in transmission. On the African scene, a top envoy to Sudan's paramilitary rapid support force on Monday, July 24th, said it was time for peace. Youssef Ezzat made his remark in Togo, where he was attending talks aimed at preventing Sudan's Darfur region from sliding deeper into war. Excess conceded that we're all looking for peace. The Sudanese people are looking for peace. Sudanese people are suffering from war for decades in regions like Darfur, in Blue Nile, in South Sudan and East Sudan, and now in the capital, in Khartoum. So this was the time to end the war and to start a new future for Sudanese people. Peace, development, justice, and equality. That's what we are looking for. And I think it's time for peace in Sudan, and access considered.
Well, Azad added his side would participate in any kind of meeting for peace and bringing people together and stop the war in Darfur and in Sudan, creating a roadmap to stop violence. A representative from a key Darfur rebel faction attending the Lomé talks welcomed the creation of roadmap to prevent the region from plunging into a state of chaos. It is now in a state of chaos, but not in a full fledged civil war. That's what we are trying to avert. That is why we put a roadmap and an action plan where we could follow through that and work with other community leaders, other leaders within Darfur, even within Sudan itself.
Well, Darfur in Western Sudan saw some of the worst bouts of violence in the conflict. In the early 2000s, the region, another bloody war, which it is never fully recovered from. The representatives in Togo capital discussed ways of reopening Darfur's El Janiniya airport under RSF control to bring in humanitarian aid.
The Togo talks came after rights campaigners in Darfur blamed the RSF and allied Arab militias for reported atrocities in their stronghold there, including rape, looting, and the mass killings of ethnic minorities. A deadly power struggle has pitted Sudan's army chief against his former deputy commander of the paramilitary RSF forces. Since April 15th, the fighting has turned Khartoum and other urban areas into battlefields. The sprawling region of Darfur saw the fighting turn into ethnic clashes.
Well, the conflict derailed Sudanese hopes of restoring the country's fragile transition to democracy, which had begun after a popular uprising forced the military's removal of longtime dictator Omar al Bashir in April 2019. A coup led by the military and RSF disrupted the democratic transition in October 2021. Pro democracy leaders, meanwhile, were meeting Monday, July 24th afternoon in Egypt's capital, Cairo, the first such gathering of Sudanese politicians since the breakout of the war. After more than 100 days of violence and destruction, we wonder, can Sudanese warring powers choose peace? Well, we can only hope.
While it could seem that the Communist Party is becoming less timid in its retaliation against American economic warfare. In 2019, as China trade war with America, when it was heating up, the People's Daily predicted that China's monopoly on rare earth minerals crucial to production of modern hardware would become a tool to counter American pressure. Well, don't say we didn't warn you. The Communist Party mouthpiece thundered for years. The bluster was just that.
Between 2009 and 2020, the number of Chinese export controls on the books ballooned ninefold, according to the OECD, a club of mostly rich countries. Yet these restrictions were haphazard, informal, and aimed at narrow targets, random warning shots rather than a strategic offensive. As America ratchets up in its sanctions against China, which, among other things, make it impossible for Western chip companies to sell Chinese customers cutting edge semiconductors and the machines to make them. New volleys from Beijing are coming thick and fast.
Well, earlier this month, after China announced its latest export controls, we can say there is time on a pair of metals used in chips and other advanced tech. A former Commerce Ministry official declared that the measures were just the beginning of Chinese retaliation. Meanwhile, in July 20th, ex-Feng, China's new ambassador, Xinfeng, rather, China's new ambassador to America, said that his country cannot remain silent in the escalating war over technology, a response he hinted was coming. All right, coming up next is sports. Let's meet Gab Ellison in the sports studio.
Latest world sports. Football. FIFA Women's World Cup 2023. Former winners Norway are fighting to stay in the Women's World Cup after a draw against Switzerland left them bottom of Group A with one game to go after being on the receiving end of a shock defeat by co-host New Zealand on the opening day. Hegerize's side needed to respond but failed to score for the second straight game. They lost star player Ada Hegerberg, who was named on the team sheet moments before kickoff, the six-time Champions League winner, walking down the tunnel amid reports she suffered a groin injury in the warm-up in Hamilton. This was after Caroline Graham Hansen, another huge talent, did not make the starting lineup. Norway had their chances, with Captain Maren blazing over from close range before a header by Sophie Hogg. Hegerberg's replacement was clawed away by Switzerland keeper Gael Thalmann. Switzerland, 2-0 winners over the Philippines in their first match, had chances of their own on a wet surface. Anna Maria fired narrowly over after creating space, while Nadine Rizin's awkward cross was just about kept out by keeper Aurora Mikkelsen. Hogg forced a fine save from Talman in the second half before substitute Graham Hansen had an attempt torn behind. But on a hugely frustrating night, Norway could not make the breakthrough. Norway must defeat the Philippines in their final group game in Auckland on Sunday, 800 BST, to stand any chance of going through. At the same time, Switzerland, who topped the group with 4 points, play New Zealand in Dunedin. The Philippines' first Women's World Cup victory has to be one of the biggest wins in the history of sport in the country, says manager Alan Stachich. Sarina Bolden's early header shocked co-host New Zealand, who missed a golden opportunity to edge closer to the knockout stages in Wellington, but it was a brilliant result for debutants, the Philippines. How can you top beating a host nation at a World Cup? It's number one, said Stachich. It was very emotional out on the pitch, seeing just about everyone crying. It's unbelievable when you hear stories of other teams needing so long to win World Cup matches. We have done it in our second match, in our first World Cup. You can't really appreciate how far back in the pack we have come compared to these teams. The unity, work rate, and heart from the team was special. I don't know if there's been a bigger win for Philippine sport. It has to be one of the biggest wins in the history of the country. Global success has come the way of the Philippines thanks to superstar boxer Manny Pacquiao. But at this World Cup, new sporting heroes are emerging. The Philippines players celebrated passionately at full time as substitute and staff sprinted onto the pitch, with many holding their heads in their hands in disbelief. Meanwhile, New Zealand, who shocked Norway on the opening day and knew another victory could have sealed their place in the last 16, were left frustrated as they could not find a breakthrough. Goalkeeper Olivia McDaniel produced heroics in stoppage time, denying New Zealand substitute Grace Jail with an excellent fingertip save as her half volley was headed towards the bottom corner. New Zealand, spurred on by a vocal home crowd, were pushing for an equalizer for the entirety of the second half, but the Jackie hand had a goal ruled out for offside by the video assistant referee VAR after she hit the post earlier, while striker Hannah Wilkinson headed across over the bar from one of the game's biggest chances. It means everything to us. We really put our head down, and we knew what was coming at us, said Mark Daniel. We had a goal in mind, and we achieved it. We couldn't have asked for any better. This is what the team and the coaching staff have done. We put in our work and came on top because of it. But we will still have so much work to do. Anthony Elanga, Nottingham Forest, signed Sweden forward from Manchester United. Nottingham Forest have signed Sweden forward Anthony Elanga from Manchester United on a 5-year deal. The 21-year-old moves on from Old Trafford, with Forest believed to have paid United a fee of £15 million. Elanga had been with United since he was 12 and achieved the first-team breakthrough in 2021, reaching 55 appearances before Forest stepped in. He said of his move, "It's a pleasure to be here. It's a proud moment, not only for me, but for my family as well. It's a big step, and I'm really looking forward to playing in front of the Forest fans at the City Ground. I had interest from elsewhere, but for now, Nottingham Forest feels like the perfect place. I've been here with United. It's a special place, but being here with Forest, I feel like it will be even more special. I'm ready for the challenge." Elanga had been on United's preseason tour of the USA, but traveled back to complete the move and become Forest's second summer signing after defender Ola Aina. He joined Steve Cooper's side despite interest from clubs in Germany and Everton, whom Elanga was close to joining on loan in January. Elanga registered 4 senior goals for United, and although he failed to score from 26 games last season, he made just 7 starts. Anthony had a number of excellent options in front of him to choose from, so we are naturally delighted that from those he has chosen to become a Nottingham Forest player, said Forest Chief Football Officer Ross Wilson. American football. NFL. Denver Broncos Eyoma Uwazurike banned for season for violating gambling policy. Denver Broncos defensive lineman Eyoma Uwazurike is the latest NFL player to be suspended for violating the league's gambling policy. The 25-year-old has been banned indefinitely for betting on league games during his rookie season in 2022. Uwazurike will be out for at least 1 year and can petition for reinstatement no earlier than 24 July 2024. 5 players were suspended in April, and last month, 3 further players were banned for 2023. Our organization fully cooperated with this investigation and takes matters pertaining to the integrity of the game very seriously, read the Broncos statement. The Denver Broncos will continue to provide all members of our organization with the necessary education, resources, and support to ensure compliance with the NFL's gambling policy. Wide receiver Calvin Ridley, then with the Atlanta Falcons, missed the 2022 season for a similar offense, but was reinstated in March. The Detroit Lions released Quintus Cephas, CJ Moore, and Stanley Berryhill after they were among 5 players sanctioned in April. The Indianapolis Colts released Isaiah Rodgers and Rashad Berry after they were among 3 players banned for the 2023 season, while Tennessee Titans right tackle Nicholas Petitferry was suspended for betting on other sports at the team facility. Gab Ellison reporting from Undaunted, ABC Amba News.
All right, thank you so much, God Ellison, for that sports report. And with the sports report, we've come to the end of Undaunted tonight. But before we go, let's take a look at our major stories.
We brought to you tonight Amazonian fighters who sent full our republic to Cameroon terrorist forces to the world beyond, also overcomers Christian group converging in Bamenda to pray for peace in restive Amazonia. We brought you real current flood, taking lives and damaging properties.
Well, tonight we told you that former CRTV sports journalist Fon Ekikie says colleagues betrayed him simply because of his views about the Amazonian conflict. Also, the ink continues to flow about Bakassi, which is not La Republic de Cameroons, but Ambazonians. We also had Barrister Tim Bessia do justice to that topic. And on the foreign scene, we told you that China has hit back against Western sanction. And that was it for tonight on Daunted, bringing into the news on Church Stories. On behalf of Steph Smart and the other crews, we say thank you for tuning in.
We'll leave you with ABC Amber TV images. Good night and God bless you.